Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Pathways to Hope. And once again, we have our esteemed colleague, John Johnson, hosting this panel for us. He did an amazing job last year, and looking forward to a spirited conversation as well this year about the intersection of faith and wellness and how that, and the importance of that, importance of acknowledging it and importance of encouraging these conversations. And also understanding that John is out there in the field doing his Sharing Hope presentations and in communities of faith and building awareness and more about mental health and wellness all the time. John's always talking about all of this, and he's out there. I encourage all of you to seek out a presentation because John does an amazing job. So really quickly, so NAMI Queens Nassau, we're out there in the community every day of the week hosting educational classes about mental health disorders, focused on caregivers, support groups, in-school presentations. Janice Garfinkel, our board director, did over 40 in-school presentations last year, and she's out there just really doing an amazing job educating both staff as well as students. And Janice, I just want you to say a word or two about your socialization programs that you're so busy doing as well in Nassau and Queens.
Okay, well, we have socialization classes, and if anybody knows people who are struggling with their mental health, one of the primary issues is the isolationism, that they just don't get out, they just don't want to communicate with people. So we have two great groups. One is Monday night, where they come and we ask them what they like to do, whether it be sing karaoke, play games, do some resilience training. And we have also arts and crafts, and everybody gets together. And I'm just going to say that people have met girlfriends and boyfriends there. People now socialize and go out to different places, have dinner with others. And we just started our pros program, which is in Hollis on Fridays from 11 to 2. And again, what we do the first hour is we try to get common likes, what people like, and socialize. And then the last hour, Carmine, who works at Sucker Hill, does something about resilience and getting along and what to expect and job training. So it's just been a wonderful experience for me.
And John's been a big part of that now, too.
Oh, and now John's going to be a really big part of it.
Of course, John's involved with it.
Now John's really part of it.
Exactly. So thank you, John, and enjoy, everybody. Again, looking forward to spirited conversation.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Janice. We also have probably a couple more board members that are going to be coming on or just tuning in. And so we thank you for all of the work that you guys do in Queens and in Nassau. As a way of introduction of myself and the reason, and one of the questions that I'm going to pose as people introduce, I'm not reading bios because hopefully people read people's bios when you were checking in, but I'm going to have our panelists talk about themselves. But real quickly, my relationship with NAMI comes from my experiences. I was diagnosed with a mental health condition, a mental health challenge, I call it, when I was 17 years old. And I've been able to successfully navigate the diagnosis with my everyday life, and I've been, fairly successful in my work. And as I was working, I've had jobs throughout my years. In my last job, I was directing a Boys and Girls Club, and I thought to myself, you know what? I think it's important for me to speak up about living with a mental health challenge and sharing my story a little bit. So to kind of give hope, and also I would say that living with a mental health diagnosis is not a death sentence. I say that, and I'm here to prove it. And I've worked, have several pretty good jobs throughout my day. I worked with NASA political season. I did work with Bill Clinton and Jesse Jackson. I was the advanced person throughout the country years ago when Bill Clinton was running for president his first time around. I was the director of the Boys and Girls Club. I was youth service coordinator for the Borough of Queens. All this with the diagnosis of bipolar. Those those things that I experienced with bipolar, besides the wonderful jobs I've had, but I also had a suicide attempt. I also was incarcerated for a felony for allegedly attacking a police officer when I was in a manic state. You know, again, living with it and coping with it has been part of my life. And now it's a blessing for me to share, as well as give people some instruction, some hope, some direction, some guidance, some support, or whatever I could do. So I've kind of left my 9-to-5s, and I've been doing NAMI. I worked with NAMI since 2016, from going into classrooms with in our own voice presentations, and also doing family to family, which is another program that NAMI has for caregivers, and just and also as living as of course a black man, and going into Black and Brown communities and trying to open up that discussion with a program called Sharing Hope, which has been very, very successful in New York City and throughout the country. So that's kind of my why. I wanted to put a different face on mental health challenges. You know, that, you know, when you hear someone that's living with bipolar, you think of someone who's, you know, like talking to himself or shot up his whole family or whatever. You know, that those are the images that we have on TV, and rightfully so. But there's more people that look like me who live with a mental health challenge than those people that are portrayed on TV. I think that people who live with mental illness are more likely to be the victims instead of the perpetrators. So I want to be clear about that. There's no need to fear me or anything like that, or fear anyone. But it's about getting support, it's getting help. There was no NAMI when I was diagnosed when I was 17 years old. So my mother, my father, my family didn't know what to do. So when I decided to leave my corporate world on my job and said, you know what, I think I want to find an engine that could kind of support people who don't have support. And I found NAMI, and they put me to work ever since. And I've been grateful to that. And so I'm going to open it up. My question for the panel is, besides introducing yourself and tell us what you do, and what you've done. Again, I didn't read any bios. One thing I would like to say though is that everybody on this panel are friends of mine. So it's so great to be able to have colleagues that are like-minded and also have friendships. So it's really, really a blessing for me to be working with people and have affiliates that I could call friend. So in saying that, I will introduce first person, Thurston Oneil. Thurston, if you could, and again, the question I have, besides you guys introducing yourself and what you do, is what is your why? Why do you think that mental health is important? Why do you think, or maybe you don't think it's important or whatever,
Yeah.
but speak to it and introduce yourself. So Thurston, if you could start off.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. and Liz and Janice, thank you all as well, and all of NAMI for even presenting this platform for all of us. I'm always amazed at how we can come together and talk about the intersection of faith and mental wellness, right? And the issues. It's very close to my heart, and it is a huge part of my why. Is that I tell everybody, anyone that knows me knows that I've been a part of the faith community my entire life. I say, I could have been born on the front pew. That's how much I've been involved in church. My mother was a pastor. My father was a pastor, and so what really led me into this field. And by the way, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the owner of Thurston, Oneil and Associates, mental health therapy organization, as well as the CEO of Long Island Teamworks. So you can find that liteamworks.org online, just to get that out of the way. But so my why, and I'll try to keep it as short as possible, John. I share that my first memory of my father, I remember seeing him in the pulpit. It was an old church out east in Suffolk County, born and raised in Suffolk County, old church. My father was a pastor. I remember him up in the pulpit. He's preaching. It must have been like a Sunday morning. My mother was playing the piano on the side. I'm the youngest of 9 children. I have 6 older sisters that spoiled me rotten. I have 2 older brothers. A couple of siblings have passed away. But fast forward to about 10 years old, my father's no longer a pastor. My father has left the church. My father is living with another woman in the same town. My father has navigated to some of his family members who were the local bootleggers, and they sold weed and stuff like that. So going from my first memory of my father as a pastor, fast forward to 10, 11 years, he's no longer with the family. He's left the church. And he is hanging with the bootleggers and selling weed and such, right? My final memory of my father is him walking down the street of Wyandanch. He's stumbling because he's, inebriated. I ask him for a few dollars. I'm hanging with my friends. We're going to the park or something. He gives me a couple of bucks. I leave. That was my last time seeing my father alive. He was stumbling down straight path in Wyandanch. Shortly after that, he passed away. And I grew up with so much anger and confusion. We moved around a lot. Our living situation was kind of unstable. So every year I was in a new school. I was always the new kid. The easiest way for me to connect with people was smoke weed. If I come to school with some weed, I can connect with the other people that smoke weed, and we go out and we smoke or whatever. And that's how I connected with people. That's how, because like I said, every year I'm the new guy and I get friends, and then next year I'm somewhere else. I smoked on a daily basis throughout school, throughout high school, even after high school. And there was a mentor, a teacher that I met in 9th grade that found me after high school. He was starting a group, like John, you said, I'm a singer. He was starting a music group, and he brought me in. But one of the requirements was that you could not do any drugs to be a part of this group. That is the thing that sort of set me free. It gave me purpose. It gave me hope. It was something I loved to do. And rest in peace to Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins was that music teacher, and he recently passed away just last year. So the reason why it's so important to me, my why, is that I understand the importance of family. I understand the importance of a man in the home. And that is, it's something that I missed out on for a long time. And it really shaped the type of father that I became. I'm a father of 4 daughters, and they will tell you that I overdo it with the amount of love and attention that I give to them. But it's because I understood sort of what I missed out on. And when it comes to faith, because I've been a part of the church, I realized at a very young age that I grew up in a Pentecostal church. So there was a lot of shouting and singing and yelling and hard preaching and all that. And I can appreciate that. But even at a very young age, I knew that there was more to God than what we were doing on a Sunday and Tuesday night, right? There was more to it. And it set me out on this journey to find it. And, you know, I'll come back to that more, but just to cut it short, that is my why. My why comes from my personal experiences with church, with family, and with my different environments. Yeah, there you go.
I turned off my my audio because I live in an apartment building, right? And of course, they're gonna cut the grass like today, you know. But thanks, Thurston. I appreciate that, and we're gonna get into more stuff. Thanks for the introduction. Can we have one of our wonderful female participants? And Tracey, do you mind?
No, I don't mind. Hello, everybody. My name is Tracey Williams. I'd like to thank NAMI and John Johnson for inviting me to be on this panel. Just a little bit about me. I know my my little bio was really short because I forgot to send it to John. So I was on vacation. So I am a mental health liaison for the District of Hempstead. My job requires me to bring in mental health and wellness services to the district, to the whole child, to the people of Hempstead. I am a clinician. I graduated HBCU, Howard University. I graduated with a degree in communications and English, and then I eventually went back to school at NYU and got a master's of art in mental health. I'm a clinician, clinical mental health. So, and I'm also a master practitioner in energy, in the Energy Leadership Index. Anybody who doesn't know what that is it's actually coaching, and basically energy leadership is how people show up at any point in time and in any particular situation. So it's a measurement of how you show up, how you react to certain situations, and how you handle things. But moving from there, the why of why I am in the profession that I am in right now, I kind of fell into it. But just a little history, I also grew up in the church, you know, raised in the church, raised with both families. Mother, not my father necessarily early on in my life, but my mother was, you know, had us in church every day. I am the middle child of three kids. And, you know, my father was he was a partier, you know what I mean? He was having a good time. My parents were totally opposite. And, but my mother always, you know, kept the faith with us and made sure we were there. During my childhood, as I was going into preteens, we had a very traumatic incident. My brother was killed as a teen. He was, and we were Irish twins. We're almost twins, and I'm the middle child, and then my younger sister. And what I noticed when my brother was killed is the trauma that affects the whole family. You know, the parents, the family, everything, and how it affected my dad, how it affected my mom, how they didn't know how to handle that type of trauma. And we, you know, the few years after that was very dysfunctional in a sense in our family. And mental health and getting mental health, you know, mental health and getting help was not something that, you know, families of color, people of color really do. Mind you, my mother was a social worker. So she was used to helping other people, but did not know how to embrace that as a family because she didn't feel like that was something we don't do that. We don't get help. So moving on, I don't want to get too long-winded with it, but moving on, as you know, I got older and I realized that people used to always come to me for help, asking me for advice, doing all of this stuff. And naturally, I would give them, and people started calling me their coach, you know, this, and I was in communication, so I actually was in radio for a while, you know, um, and but my mother being a social worker, as I say, and always seeing her embrace other people, you know, and help them, and it just kind of all falls into place. So when this opportunity came up, you know, somebody was like, you need to really, you know, why don't you go to school for like mental health? And I was like, what? No, you know what I mean? That's not what I do. But I did it anyway because it kept calling me. It was a calling. And I've always been one to help people, want to bring people in. And I just feel like as far as mental health and mental wellness, especially in Black and Brown communities, people there's such a stigma with it. We don't go for it. We don't approach it. We don't want to get help. We won't want to admit that we need help, and we don't have the resources of people that necessarily look like us, you know. And there's also I would say a unconscious stigma with it, or I can't think of the word right now, excuse me, but you know, as far as people not having I guess prejudices against people of color when it comes to mental health, the judgment that comes in with some clinicians and some people. And I feel like we need to kind of open that door to explain to people that we're not necessarily what everybody thinks we are as far as people of color, and getting help for, you know, mental health. You know what I mean? We are mental people. We are not necessarily clinically diagnosed, but we all need something.
Man.
So, and you know, mental health and mental wellness and help for people comes in so many ways. You know what I mean? It's not just a clinical way. And as John and Thurston know, I try to bring in things to the community that don't necessarily say mental health, but speak to mental health and the wellness of the community. Yoga, sound baths, you know what I mean? Art therapy, physical fitness, all that stuff. People say, well, that's not mental health. It absolutely is. Nutrition is mental health. So that's my thing, bringing things in that people don't necessarily think is going to help with your wellness, but absolutely does, because community, spiritual wellness, all of that has a lot to do with the mental health and wellness of how we function during the day.
Amen. Wow. You're gonna get it. So many things. I'm writing notes. I'm writing questions. And I do want to emphasize to the audience that, you know, there is a chat, and again, I want it to be more interactive. So if you have questions, write those questions in the chat. We're gonna open it up towards the end and give enough time to deal with those questions. I think the word you would think looking at maybe was cultural competency, in terms of you know, clinicians and you know, faith people, you know, that, I think so. That's something that we're going to get into. But I appreciate your introduction, and I appreciate all of your openness about the things. I'm liking it so far. Now, can we move on to Ernie Hart? Ernie, I was saying when he came on that Ernie is probably my oldest friend, and we were in diapers together, literally. Well, kind of, so not the same diaper, but in diapers together. And so, Ernie, if you could speak a little bit about, you know, what you do, who you are, faith, whatever you want to talk about.
Well, good morning, everyone. John, thank you for inviting me. I've been hearing about NAMI for basically as long as John's been a part of it. He's telling me what he's doing, what he's not doing, and we talk about it at times. And I've always found it very interesting. And also, I also realized how important, I guess it crystallized in my mind how important mental wellness is, basically just to live well. I am a Catholic deacon, which is, and diaconate in Catholicism is a ministry of service. And I look at all my life, everything that I've done is generally in service to others. Back when I was a Supreme Court judge, I was a criminal court judge. I was associate dean at the Columbia Medical Center, basically responsible for the Columbia's presence in Harlem Hospital. Assistant district attorney. I teach at Queensborough, criminal justice. But all these things.
Wait, you left something out though.
What?
Assistant police commissioner?
Oh yeah, that.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
Deputy police commissioner for legal fields.
Deputy.
Now, if I was to start there, I was deputy commissioner at the time when we had the protests, George Floyd after his death, COVID, and it was a very interesting time because it kind of highlighted the issue of mental wellness. You had the protests basically where our community basically started to protest and really be out there because we wanted to be recognized. The Black community wanted to recognize that Black Lives Matter. What does that mean? It doesn't mean, and working in the police department at that time was very interesting. Black Lives Matter and the perception of what Black Lives Matters went with the general community, particularly in the police department. And what I found is that the perception of society, police officers in particular, has an effect on how they police. So when we talk about mental wellness, police have or society as projected by the police have a certain way of thinking when it comes to people of color, particularly, and they act in a way because of that perception, even though there's nothing wrong. It's a cultural thing. There was one incident. One of the things I was involved with when I was in the police department was looking at the way psychologists qualify and disqualify people. One of the things that I remember that I just went off the deep end. There was a psychologist who disqualified a young person of color because they said he was immature because he lived with his parents still. And obviously I didn't take that well, but I said, what are you talking about? So got very defensive. But you see how important perception is in terms of mental wellness. One of the things I also do is I'm chairman of the board of Martin DePorres, Family and Group Services and Youth Services. And what do? We basically are deal with at-risk youth and their families. And a lot of them, unfortunately, have mental health issues, mental wellness, perception, self-image issues, which is something that permeates their lives forever if they don't, if that doesn't get checked. Certainly, as a judge, mental illness was a big thing. We know that like half of the people who are incarcerated have some kind of mental health issue. What do we do about it? We know that when the police operate in or are called to a situation where as you spoke about, John, where the so-called perpetrator is acting and has some kind of mental health episode, police, what do police do about it? We have calls for social workers to respond, and which is not necessarily a good thing because social workers don't want to respond to that because it is one of the more dangerous things that police do. Also, it is also one of the easiest ways to get hurt or to not only yourself but by the police. There's so much that I can talk about. So much when
Yeah.
it comes to mental health, mental wellness. Even my students, I give, because of all the jobs that I do, and I don't have office hours, they can text me any day, anytime, and they do. Like they're taking a test, 11 o'clock at night, they text me. But they come to me with their problems. And that's, as a deacon, that's what I do. Before I marry, before marriages, I want to, what's going on? How do you expect to live? How do you expect to live together? What's going on? So it's kind of like this whole idea, without even knowing that I was doing all this. I've been involved, I guess, John, in this kind of work all my life. And you, John, you and I probably are the best when we get together. You ever see that meme on TikTok when people are laughing, two black guys are laughing and they're like hitting each other and rolling around? That's us. That's us.
Yeah.
It is such a relief. We make each other, we pull each other out of whatever despair we have, or it really is a cool relationship. And we haven't always, we lost touch a little bit, but we came back, and it's great.
Yeah, I have to jump in for a second, and I'm going to have Charita speak. I just have to say about Ernie. Yeah, I'm one of those people that would text him at 11 o'clock at night and say, hey, but also I guess birds of a feather. I have a couple other people that are on this call that could chime in and about how our relationship and relationships was so important to me. During my phases, my manic phases or my depressive phases, but also when I'm not, and how important that is. NAMI definitely stresses relationships and how that is one of the key things in my life to keep me going and being able to talk to Ernie and others about my issues and stuff like that have been amazing to me, and that have helped me to cope and to deal. And there's so many things, Ernie, that you got into. I'm taking so many notes, so we'll get into that, some specific things with Ernie. That you're on the front lines with the cops and the brutality and stuff and all that. So we'll get into that, as well as your ministry. Ernie, my brother died in 18, my dad died in 20, and my mom died in 21. And those were difficult times for me. And not only was Ernie there, but he also presided over each one of their funerals. And it was, and I thank you. If I didn't thank you before, I'm publicly thanking you, Ern. All right, so I want to move on to another friend, Charita. Charita and I met in college umpteen thousand years ago. I'm not gonna say how long, Charita. I tell my age, but we won't tell your age, right? So, talk a little bit about your journey and your experiences, and great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, everybody. My name is Charita Cole-Brown, and I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder at the age of 21. By 22, I had a psychotic break a month before graduation, and I went home. Two of my friends took me home by train. The psychologist at Wesleyan had them take me home by train. Went to home with my parents in Baltimore, which is where I live now. Went to be with my parents in Baltimore. My mother was just in complete denial of what was going on with me. Instead of taking me directly to a place where my mental health challenge could be dealt with, they just tried to do something themselves. At this point, it's important to understand that I actually have a genetic mental illness, from my mom's family. So it does make sense that she would be the person that would have the hardest time with it. My mother was raised by an actively bipolar woman. Because she was very closed-mouthed about it. She died last year at 91. We know she was abandoned at least twice. Not because my grandmother wasn't a great lady, because my grandmother was a wonderful lady, but she had what was at that time called manic depression. So she would be in another headspace and my mother would get left. So that is what kind of set my mother up. It also was the thing that made my mother create a space amongst her 7 children where we always needed to be accountable for one another. So my mother used to tell us that we were all we had. Of course, we weren't. We all had friends, but we understood that the bottom line is that you really do have to take care of your people. This point I'm going to share, I told you my grandmother had bipolar disorder. My great uncle, her brother, had bipolar disorder. There were people with major depression in the family. For those who don't know, some people probably already do know, there are 3 categories of mental illness that are considered most severe. They're considered to be bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and major depressive disorder. Major depressive disorder is different from like a depression that occurred because of something that happened. These are more illnesses that are brain-based. So for all of those things, I dealt with those things and am dealing with those things. So when I came home with my friends, I went to a doctor who told my parents that their daughter, who had just been academically excellent, would probably eventually need a caregiver. Lest we get very upset, I ended up, by the grace of God, for the end of my parents' lives, the last 10 years, being the person that set up an assisted living in their home and managed that assisted living until my parents passed away. My mom, as I said, so that was from 2013 to 2023. The thing that's really important about that is that people think that you cannot live well if you have a mental health challenge. The truth of the matter is that you can. You have to set up. I set up a wellness plan in 1980, from 1987 to 1989, that lasted me forever. I didn't need any kind of therapy until 2019 when I was burning out from caregiving. One of the things I do like to share, and I'm gonna close my section down. One of the things I do like to share is that there is a Native American axiom of the 4 rooms, and it says that everybody has 4 rooms: a mental room, a physical room, an emotional room, and a spiritual room. And you should go in every room every day, if only to air them out. So as I say that, I believe that we have to look at all those areas of our lives. When I came home at 22, my parents were told, don't expect her to get married, don't expect her to have children. Don't expect any of that, because we're barely holding her together. I got married. My husband died when my children were 6 months and 19 months old. By the grace of God, my children are now in their 30s. They are some of the kindest women you could ever meet. And that is intentional because God blessed me to help them intentionally to be kind women and to know how important that is. So I'm going to shut this down, John. And then wait, I didn't say my why.
I'm sorry.
Oh, let me say my why. My why for all of this mental health stuff, besides, if that wasn't enough, is that a person can live well with a mental health challenge. And in my case, I know everyone doesn't have a relationship with God, but in my case, my relationship with God has made all the difference. I was raised, my mom was devoutly Catholic. I am now Apostolic Pentecostal. And my relationship with God has been the thing that has helped me not to fall into the pit that I was expected to fall into.
Wow. Powerful power. And what you did not mention is the incredible memoir that you wrote.
Oh.
Right? Define the Verdict, which is an incredible memoir. And I think you said I got a mention in that book, right? But anyway,
No.
I just know that you were a couple of years ahead of me, and you were one of these people that I could always share and talk to. And this is before, I even knew anything, or you ain't knew anything about me. I think that, living with this diagnosis that I've had, this has been an incredible journey. But one of the things I'm doing, what I'm doing now for the past couple of years, is to say just what you said, and that is, you could live and thrive and be well. And when I talk about people that are living with mental health challenges that are extremely successful, whatever success is. And again, it's not a death sentence. And that's one of the reasons why NAMI is there to support and to help. And I'm here to share and shed my story and my light, as well as everyone on this panel sharing this. So we all have testimonies, everybody. You may not be diagnosed with schizophrenia or bipolar, but we all have mental health, mental wellness. We all deal with sadness, depression. We all deal with anxiety. And that's one of the things that, is so universal. It's not, there's no religion, or there's no political affiliation. There's no territorial where you live. It's universal, and everyone deals with it. So it's a subject now that I'm glad is getting so much attention from Olympic athletes to musicians and actors and actors. And the more people are coming out to talk about mental health challenges, the more it kind of normalizes it to some degree, and people say, "Oh, wow." And I'm gonna pose another question, but I know one of the things that I talk about when I do speak is the reaction, and the reaction is, "Oh, wow, you've been so successful, you've been so in your life, wow," because of course people are not thinking about that, right? And the second thing, and Ernie and some of the people on this panel, or some of the people on this could attest to, they'll say, the second response I get, people who know me say, "Yeah, John, we always knew you were crazy," right? And the third response is, "Me too, my uncle, my cousin, my mother, my friend." So it's good that we do forums like this to share and to shed light and to say that, hey, this is something that is universal. So the question, there's so many things that I want to deal with, and we're going to go again. I hope people are writing in the chat the specific questions that you want to ask someone. Let us know. I know Liz and Janice are manning the the chat. Question I have for our panelists is, I'm going to go back to faith, and how does that, as a clinician, Thurston, the clinician, Tracey, as Ernie, someone who's a man of faith, how does that coincide with your mental health, and what do you tell people if that's something that they don't do or whatever? How does that play? So anybody want to jump in there?
Okay.
Tracey? Mhm.
What I found is, for most people, mental wealth starts with faith, because that's where we start out in life. You know, as far as being raised in churches or, you know, any communities and stuff like that. So the first thing that, especially in Black and Brown communities, that people did reach for when there were traumatic experiences, where there's trauma going on, which we know Black and Brown communities have had a lot of stress and post-traumatic stress and trauma, is that the first thing they reach for is their faith. You know what I mean? And it's very important because it establishes a strong will and a hold to believe that things will get better. You know, that's how faith comes into practice. As far as with mental health and mental wellness, that is the goal, to bring people to, you know, to get better at whatever is going on with trauma or anything else in their life. So there are a lot of people who quote unquote say they don't have faith, but they do have something that they do grab onto, whether they know it or not. It may not be technically religious, you know, but there's always something in their psyche or whatever that reaches for something to be able to handle, you know, situations. And some people need more help than others. So what happens is, when I'm talking to, you know, people and discussing things, first of all, everybody is mental, like you said, John. We all go through mental things every day. You know what I mean? We just don't necessarily need it diagnosed. So it's how you show up, how you deal with situations, how you walk into a room. You know what I mean? And like I said, with post-traumatic stress, you know, and stuff like that, that is generational, that kind of carries on. Sometimes we don't even realize that we're going through those things. But the whole idea is, most people do reach for some type of faith. They just have to find out where it is in their life. What are you reaching for help? What are you reaching for guidance? What are you reaching for to build your strength back up?
Yeah. So just to
So
jump in, to continue with the question, I'm thinking about a rabbi that was on last year, and also an imam who was talking about you know, the whole idea of, you know, we could pray about it, and some of their people that were in their churches or their mosques or whatever were saying that I don't have to really do much, or, you know, I could pray about. So Thurston, Ernie, anybody want to jump into that whole thing about, oh, let's just pray about it, and that'll take care of things. Anyone want to jump in there?
Right. I was at, case in point, I was at a retreat one time, and this man, he was a physician. He was going through a divorce, and he says, you know, he in his words, he was being raked over the coals. They was trying to take everything away from him, and what he said was, I'm just praying and I'm just leaving everything to God. I said, that's not how this works. You have to put yourself in a position, the gifts that God gave you, to be able to help yourself. Just to sit back and say, oh, God will take care of me, that's not going to get you where you need to be.
Yeah.
So, and I find that, to Tracey's point, you know, a lot of people don't understand and realize they have faith until they're faced with a tragedy. Or I have a friend of mine who is an avowed atheist. He was having some medical tests, and this surprised me. This is a couple of days ago. He surprised me. He goes, "Oh, please pray for me that I don't have cancer." I went, I'm thinking to myself, really? So, you know, faith, you know, the thing about faith is that faith gives you hope. And when you don't have hope, you got some problems here. So people, to Tracey's point again, people don't understand or don't realize what faith means. They don't know that they have faith. And one of the things that I try to do, because I'm in a lot of situations where you know, people are faced with some sort of crisis or whatever, the faith part comes in afterwards. I kind of talk about you know, what is going on in your life? What are you going to do? You're I'm not a mental health counselor. Although my daughter just graduated from NYU with a Master of Social Work and Master of Public Health, and that's what she's doing. Shout out to Julie, working for the family. And you know, I talked to her about how to deal with people who are in need at any particular time. It's one at a time. It's a lot of discussion. I certainly am a man of faith, and I rely on my faith. I pray often because it clears my mind. It's not that I necessarily expect, you know, if I'm looking for something in particular, I'm not expecting to get it at all necessarily. But I know that my faith teaches me that I'm being heard, and that makes me feel better. And I try to, and me listening to other people because of my faith, I think makes them feel better as well, because people like to be heard.
So one of the things, Thurston, I'm gonna throw you in here for a minute, and that is, I know one of the scriptures says, faith without works means nothing. So I want you to address that and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, listen, on this entire topic about, you know, praying your way through it, and God's gonna handle it, he'll take care of it. It's amazing. We're in 2024, and I'm just gonna preface my statement by saying this. I've had conversations and I've been on podcasts and such where I sound very critical of the church. I'm not really critical of the church. I appreciate the time in which I was born, because I think we're seeing a massive shift in the faith world where leaders are really acknowledging the power of therapy, the power of counseling, and that does not mean that they're moving away from the power of prayer, right? We all understand, if we grew up in the church, if we spent time in the church, we know that prayer works, prayer changes things, yes, all of that. But what we're also taught is that God has placed certain things in our life, certain people, certain professionals in our lives, and given us access to things to help us through the daily grind of life, right? If that's a therapist, just like if you're having financial trouble, you go to a financial specialist. If you're having physical illness, you go to a doctor. You go to someone that specializes in that field. Now, like I said, I was born at a time where it was sort of old school Pentecostal church, right? And we heard a lot about just pray about it, just pray about it, just pray about it. And I do, I lend that to the fact that there might not have been many pastors or preachers that were officially trained, right? Like anybody could say, I'm saved now and I'm starting a church. And they weren't really equipped to fully lead people. They may know the word of God, they can recite scripture and all of that, but leading people is different from just reading the Bible and just quoting scripture, right? So now we're in a time where I think our leaders are more not just charismatic, but they're more educated. They're more educated in human growth and how life works on a regular basis for the regular everyday human being. Yes, we're going to pray, but I'm also going to connect you to someone that can help you to deal with this. And so I definitely have to give my pastor, Dr. A.R. Bernard and Christian Cultural Center, a huge shout out, because coming to Christian Cultural Center 26 years ago, the thing that stood out to me, and it was like, remember I said, I knew there was something different. Even from a young age, I knew there was more to God than what I was experiencing in that atmosphere that I was raised in. And when I came to Christian Cultural Center, it was not just how everything was formatted, but the word that stood out to me was Christ in culture. Basically, taking Christ outside of the four walls of this church and taking it into whatever field you are led to really introduce. And that doesn't mean that you are handing out tracts everywhere you go on your job, but it's about the way that you live, the way that you present, the way that you present Christ in your life to the world. It doesn't mean that you're what he calls it, spiritual muggings. Like every time somebody passed by you, like, you got to believe in Christ. No, it's about the way that you live your life. It's so prevalent now, and even Christian Cultural Center they have this big push for this mental health awareness conference that they're doing. It's sort of unheard of for a mega church to be doing that, but I know we're not the only ones. There are more and more people doing it in the faith community, which makes me very proud to be a part of a church like that, but also happy that our community is now going to get the real help that they need alongside the faith-based belief and hope and all of that. It's very, very important. And I get people in my as clients all the time. I don't present myself as a Christian counselor. And I don't bring it into session unless my client wants to bring it in. What I do know is that Christ is in that session because I'm there. Not that I'm Christ, but the way that I present, the way that I present even my office, the way that I pray over my office and present an atmosphere for that client to feel comfortable, to feel heard, to feel like someone really is listening to them, just like Christ would, right? That is a part of the work that we do. So I'm happy that we are moving away from the just pray about it era, and we're really getting to the nitty gritty of what does this person need? Maybe they don't need a therapist, but maybe they need a financial counselor. Maybe they need someone that can help them in with their physical health, right? If you have high blood pressure, you can't just pray and continue to eat burgers and chips all the time. That's not how it works.
That's what I do.
That's not how it works. So I'm happy that I live in this time where we're having these conversations about that intersection between faith and mental wellness.
Great. So before I know Charita, before you jump in, you jump in, Charita, again, because I want to say something again.
Okay, when we're talking about just praying about it, I always say it doesn't mean don't pray. As Thurston was saying, I pray a lot, but I also have a whole wellness plan that I adhere to. I see a psychiatrist every 3 to 4 months. I can't prescribe my own medication. I do take medication. That does not mean that I don't love God and God doesn't love me. And I'm thriving using those human mechanisms. I have a whole plan. I have to get enough sleep. I have to eat well. I have to exercise. All of those things are things that I need to do. When I meditate, people have different meditations, mindfulness meditation, people do yoga. I meditate on scripture. And so it's getting your wellness plan together and living according to your wellness plan. I've been living well for 30 years, and people look at me like, what? You must not have really been sick. You must be wrong, because no, I was really sick. And when you look at my book, it has hospital records in it. And when you look at those hospital records, you will see that there was not so much hope that medical professionals had for me, but you can set up a plan. And I did it with a pastoral counselor. You can set up a plan and you can live by your plan. And if it doesn't work, you can pull it back together. But I would never, when people are saying just pray, I say there are things besides prayer, but don't stop praying. As the old mothers used to say, the Lord is nigh. Don't stop praying, he'll hear your cry. So I say, keep praying and add to other things.
Amen. So I know that I started writing a book 30 years ago, but anyway, years ago, and so it's really into 5 sections, and people who went through NAMI in our own voice kind of understand how I set this up. And the first part of the book is about the tough times and what happened, what led up to my my being diagnosed. And then the second topic that I deal with is acceptance, right? Accepting the fact that I had to deal with it, and how people, they either did accept it or didn't accept it and stuff like that. And we get into the whole Simone Biles where people don't really accept the fact that she was really ill. And I talk about that. The third part I talk about is treatment, right? Treatment deals with medication, doctors, right? The fourth part of the book is coping. And one of my coping mechanisms is my faith and prayer, along with, walking on the beach. And my friends always tease me and say, oh, there go John climbing the mountains again, whatever. But that's part of my regimen, right? My wellness plan. And then the fourth part is talking about, where I see mental illness, the whole how government is, how things are changing about the whole idea of mental health advocacy. My question is, where do you guys see, now we're in this election year, and what's happening at the Thurston, you talked a little bit about changes and stuff like that. Where do you see, Ernie, city government, the police, and what's happening to how they're dealing with mental health and mental health challenges? Ernie?
I think one of the problems is there are fits and starts. I think that city government is fractured in the way it approaches mental health. I mean, you do have a Department of Mental Health, Health and Mental Health Hygiene. However, it is reactive rather than proactive in a lot of ways. You have a crisis. You have the police having a crisis, not only as they relate to the public, but themselves. We had another officer commit suicide. What is it about policing that drives a young man or woman to suicide? The police have had, I think last year was 8 or 9. I mean, it was a lot of people having some difficulty. We had a lot of programs, a lot of money spent, but no result. Yeah, I'm not going to get into politics about who did what when, but it seems like it is. I guess the good thing is that it's recognized that it's an issue, but I don't think anybody can get their hands around what to do about it. And the thing is, it's not one thing. It has to be, you have to approach a particular problem a particular way. You can't, it's not one size fits all. How do you deal with, for example, how do you deal with mental health that leads to criminal behavior? Right? For the longest time, the criminal justice system was punishing people because they had some kind of mental illness. And we know, we study criminology. We know that sometimes your mental health leads one to crime. So punishing somebody for that is not going to get you to where you need to be, because it wasn't necessarily, the intent. You study, what's in criminal behavior. You look at mens rea, which is the guilty mind, the intent, and the actus reus, the actual act. Society as a whole does not necessarily recognize mental health as being a reason for committing a crime. Right. Sometimes, very seldom. I mean, we have, if it's a severe thing, like if it's I'll give you an example. When you have that crime of passion, everybody hears about crime of passion. And what does that mean? That means that something triggered you into doing something that you would not otherwise have done. And therefore, we will make an exception. I mean, that's they would make an exception to holding you to the full extent of criminal responsibility.
Right.
But it doesn't really work. It's not something that's carried through. You have like women who are victims of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
They react because of the mental anguish that they're being put in. Not only men, not only women, men as well, and they react. And a lot of times, the law punishes them because they reacted to something that they couldn't help themselves. They didn't get help. Nobody would listen to them, etc. So there are a lot of issues in terms of government, and I know government is always trying, and there are advocates like all of you here. But I think that one of the things the government has to do is like separate, look at certain things, and go and not just one size. You know, all mental health is treated this way, or all mental health. That doesn't work, and it just keeps on. You just keep on spending money, and nothing ever gets resolved.
Sure. Tracey, in your travels and your experiences, I think you spoke a little bit about it in your introduction. You sound like you have an optimist. Ernie sound a little bit more pessimistic, but you seem to sound a little more optimistic in the things that you're doing. Ernie, I'm not saying that you're just telling the truth of what's happening. So
well, if I may interrupt you said what I'm just saying that I'm always optimistic.
You are.
Faith always does that. However, what I'm saying is government has to change the way they
absolutely
the service. That's what I'm
absolutely saying. Okay. Trace, anything to say?
Yeah, I want to say, listening to Ernie and what he was saying, and it's so ironic because I think I told you, John, last winter I spoke on a panel about law enforcement and mental wellness and how they handle stuff. And I got a lot of feedback because it was a situation where when police officers do mental wellness checks, they're reactive, okay? And I said on the panel, and everybody was saying, oh, more training and stuff like that. And me blatantly, I said that overall, police officers should not be doing mental wellness checks. Because as far as being trained, we all get professional developments or whatever profession we are in now, because it's a big thing on mental health and mental wellness and how to take care of things. But in reality, you don't send a dentist to put out a fire, just like you don't send a fireman to pull teeth, okay? What you are trained in strategically and overall, as far as your profession, is how you're gonna react first. Right. And when it comes to a mental wellness check. And it's not any fault of your own, but since I am hired through the Office of Mental Health, through the job that I'm doing now, training is important, but it's also getting it right as far as what should be done, as far as people who are suffering with mental health issues and are I guess showing quote unquote criminal behavior, but it's because of their issues. Somebody needs to be on point. There needs to be more money in training professionals who are in that profession to address or go to those mental wellness checks or deal with that, because what we have been finding is lately, I mean, there was a young lady killed a couple of months ago by police officers, and she was mentally ill, and her family called for help. You know what I mean? And because she had a knife and there was a threat, the police officer did not know how to de-escalate. Although they've had professional developments and training, they still are going to react of what they were trained in first. So I am very optimistic that there is a way to handle it, but it needs to be addressed and put out there and called on a little bit more, so that to me, there needs to be more money in hiring people in the mental health profession, in law enforcement. You know what I mean? To do those checks, not police officers. You know what I mean? Per se. That's just my thing.
Oh yeah.
So, but just like you, John. I mean, you got arrested.
I was gonna say. I mean, we all have stories. The
You know,
incredible. Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't addressed as a mental health issue. It was addressed as criminal behavior. You know.
Right. So I actually, had to go through the whole the court system, and the fact that I'm going to say it was good policing in that, I was definitely having a manic episode, and I definitely was the one who was the police officer was just kind of standing there, and I went up there. And I was the one to get the hell out the neighborhood, and I was saying outrageous things, and my family and some of my family's on, they were having an intervention that they couldn't find me. And next thing they heard were sirens, and my wife, my ex-wife at the time, they pulled up and they saw me in handcuffs on the ground, thought I got shot. It would have been one of those unarmed black man gets shot by, and it would have been, I had a chance. And I worked with people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. It would have been crazy, right? So the good thing about the police officer was he did not pull out a gun. He pulled out mace, which is he squared in the eye, and I went down. That was good, but I easily could have got shot. And to what you're saying is, there's no training. Police officers are not trained to deal with someone like me when I was having that episode. And that's something that is necessary. There has to be more work done, not just professional development, but there should be courses that the police officers, firefighter, I'm coming into Hempstead schools to talk to teachers. We have to start having this as a regular discussion so people could really learn how to deal with this population of folks. And so that's important. Question. And, again, I'm going to go.
Okay.
Yes, please. Sure, I was going to go to you, Charita. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't talk about when I introduced myself was that I am very active in NAMI Metro Baltimore. I'm on the NAMI Maryland Board of Directors. And one of the things that I have done is participate in specifically what Tracey is talking about, which is crisis intervention training for police officers.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they have in Queens, but in Baltimore, when they have a new cadet group, they have classes for them to talk to them about mental health and about dealing with people calmly. And if somebody has called in, because we have 988. If someone has called in and called it in as a mental health emergency, learning how to do it differently. And they also have people that can show up with an officer and a behavioral health person. So those two people come together and try to calm down the situation, because it is about de-escalation. It's not about people coming up to the heights, because if a police officer comes to you with his hand on his gun, that's going to escalate you. Then my other thing that's a problem for me, there was a situation where someone got shot and he was naked. And my thing is, where was he hiding his weapon? Where could that have been?
What's the threat?
Why? Yeah, no, but I'm saying, why did that officer feel threatened?
Right.
And that's why officers need to be trained, because I was horrified, because I'm like, what was threatening you about a naked man?
Right.
What
So,
was going to happen?
John, if I may.
Leads me to the next. So get Ernie, get it.
Police officers do get trained. I mean,
Yeah.
in New York, it's constant reevaluation, de-escalation. That's not, I mean, the problem is, and listen, here's a statistic, and I think this is still true. Police officers wear body-worn cameras, right? So 150,000 uploads of body-worn camera footage is uploaded every week. 150,000 police officers interacting with the public, which is unbelievable. Most of the stuff that happens, we don't hear about because nothing happens, because the police officers, they de-escalate, whatever. But unfortunately, there are times when things happen and it blows up. One of the things that, one of the more difficult things is, depending on not necessarily somebody who has no clothes on, but police go or are called to a situation. If you remember, there's 2 officers that got killed last year in January, and I took part in their funeral at St. Patrick's. What happened? The son was having a mental health episode. She called the police. The police go in, and immediately they get shot, killed. And I see this on body-worn camera. I'm looking at this. I can't even tell you. This will be in my brain forever. So we have a situation. So it's not like, I don't want people to think that, the police are not really, they are investing a lot of time and effort in this, but the problem is it's not one size fits all. What do you do in a situation like that? You're not going to call a mental health professional, because that probably would have ended in disaster as well. So it's a very complex problem.
Yeah.
So I just don't want, I just want to think that, the police, police departments, particularly the bigger ones like New York, they're really making an effort to deal with, and for the most part, they're successful. But when they're not, they're
That's
really,
when it blows up.
Those are the stories that make the news, right?
And I'm coming to you right now.
Okay.
So I'm coming to you with a question, but go ahead.
But I wanted to make sure I touched on something that Ernie and Tracey was talking about, and this can be a touchy subject. And then Charita, also, we do have something similar to that in our area in Nassau County. I don't necessarily think it's funded enough to have enough people on call, right? It's very limited, but we do have something like that in place, where a mental health professional can come to those type of situations and help. And Ernie, you're absolutely right. Not every situation is amenable to a mental health professional coming to handle it. You're absolutely right. And the news just gives us the stories on the fringes, right? Like you said, they don't give us the 140,000 of those uploads. We see the maybe 5, 10, maybe 500 that has a problem. Yes, it's dashed. Thank you, Liz. So we see a small portion of those uploads. The vast majority of those uploads are very good interactions, or at least peaceful, that don't end in a tragedy, right? Those are not spewed across the news. But what I'll say about the amount of money that's spent, there's a tremendous amount of money spent, but I think that they really have to take a hard look at who they're giving the money to. Are these organizations familiar or even interested in the way that they deal with Black and Brown communities, right? Are they being not only trained, because listen, I'm all for a one-off training, but we need things that are embedded into the culture of our community. So, and that now I'm gonna go back to Tracey, and something that we've been developing and that we're about to launch is called the Brothers Like Us Mental Wellness Initiative, where it's something that's consistent. Every 2 weeks, there's a place that men, specifically, we talk about men's mental wellness, from the community can come in to talk, to discuss any issues that's going on in their lives regarding marriage, regarding relationships, regarding law enforcement issues that they have going on, finances, whatever, health, whatever it is. And we have a tremendous list of subject matter experts set to come in to present and it's not lectures, it's discussion based. So you don't just come there, sit for an hour and a half and hear somebody talk to you. You have the opportunity to talk to these professionals. So we have mayors ready to come in. We have lawyers ready to come in. We have men's issue specialists ready to come in and share their expertise. These are the type of things I think we need to have in place. And this is where I believe the money should be put into programs that are consistent and sustainable in the community, right? And this is just one. No one organization can handle all that's needed for the entire community. So there's always space. Like we talk about doing this men's initiative, there are thousands of men's initiative happening, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't start ours, because we're gonna be able to help a number of people that maybe the other ones are not helping, or that they don't get to, or it's not close enough to them. So we're doing it right in the community where and we're looking to build it up to where it is that safe space for men to come together to talk. It brings them out of isolation, like we talked about earlier, and lets them know other people are going through the same things you're going through. And this is a place where you can come and talk about it and discuss it and really bring some additional level of healing and community for those individuals that are able to make it. So I have to really give kudos to Tracey, because she, from our discussions that we had, she was really on board with this, and she was behind it, and she was excited about something like this, bringing something like this to our community. And community work is vital. But again, when funders are looking at where they're sending the money, typically they go to the larger organizations. Yes, the larger organizations, they've been around for a while, but they don't look at the internal workings of those organizations. Do those organizations know the community that they're looking to serve? Or are they just looking to take their percentage off the top because they're administrators, and then whatever happens with the money happens? No, we have to look deeper into how these things are being facilitated. And do you have someone on your team that knows the community? And not only on your team that knows the community, but will they have the support of upper management to really initiate programming that's going to make a difference in the community? Or are they just looking to exhaust whatever budget they get, and then when that's done, they're gone? It has to be sustainable. Has to be sustainable.
Good stuff. So this brings me into one of the last questions, and because I really want to, I don't see a lot of questions in the chat, but I do want to open it up to people who want to ask specific questions. I see a couple of questions that we could address, but I want to just really quickly deal with the whole, we're going until about 1:15 or so. And then what's going to happen, guys, is that we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back briefly, and then we're going to present national, NAMI National. We're affiliate. We're Queens Nassau. There are several affiliates. There's 2 other affiliates in the New York area. We're Queens Nassau. But NAMI National has a presentation that they're going to be doing from about, that we're going to be playing from about 1:30 to about 3. But I'm going to hopefully bring some of the panelists back for a quick goodbye before we present the national. So we're going to take about a half-hour break, but at about 1:15. I do want to ask, and we touched on a little bit, and all these things that I'm hearing cultural competency. I'm hearing there's differences in how what's needed in the community, the different communities, African American communities. I know that one of the programs that we're doing is Sharing Hope, where we're going into Black and Brown communities to present and talk about mental health from the perspective of what's happening to Black folks. We have something called Compartiendo Esperanza, which is dealing with people of Latin descent, right? My question is, a lot of people feel that that's not necessarily important because mental illness is mental illness. I do use the example that in one of our videos, there's a guy talking about a historian talking about when it was considered to be a mental illness if you wanted to be free as a slave, right? So we have to start thinking about, well, what is that? Who's defining mental illness? What's happening in the communities? You know, what's the disparities between what's happening in affluent communities and poor communities? I had a chance to do work with Meta World Peace and Queensborough projects, Queensbridge projects, and there's a different vibe than when I go out to the South Shore of Long Island or the North Shore of Long Island, and when I'm speaking there, there's differences. So my question is that relevant? Is that something we should be talking about, cultural competence between clinicians, people, healthcare providers, and also police departments, fire departments? You know, is that something that's relevant? How do you guys feel about that? And take it, whoever wants to take it.
Okay, I'll start again. No, I just think that it's important to know, like you said, in different communities, there are, and you know, mental health is stereotyped, okay, depending on the community that you are in, okay? That's it in the long run, because, you know, me dealing with even bringing in mental health services into the district, and I deliberately try to bring in people who have an understanding of the cultural and the cultural competence. I deliberately do things for access and equity. You know what I mean? To make sure that the access that the people have in Black and Brown community is equal to what people are getting in other communities. But I also focus on bringing in people of color who understand their communities. And I think it's important because a lot of times, and what I've experienced very directly, is the stereotypes that people of other persuasions bring in to treat Black and Brown people, okay? And they are wrong, period. I'm gonna say it, they are wrong in how they address it. And I've had to put a check on certain things, you know what I mean, because of that. I'm not saying that everybody does that, but because of history, like you said, freedom was considered, you know, a mental illness for a minute. And you know what? You know, as far as generational ideals that keep coming up and bringing back and keep circling back, those things keep coming up. You know what I mean? Not necessarily freedom, but the stereotypes that deal with people of Black and Brown persuasions, or, you know. So I think it is important, something that has to be addressed, something that more money needs to be put in, you know what I mean? And they need forums like this for us to speak on it, so people are aware that everybody is not stereotyping them based on mental health, because even in trying to bring in mental health services into community, there is a stigma behind it. And a lot of Black people don't want to deal with it because of past experiences of what they've had with people opposite of who they are. So I think it's important that all of that is addressed so that the stigma is gone, you know, more awareness comes in, there's more equity and more access to people who look like us, who are professional and can handle the issues that come with, you know, with culture.
Thurston, you know, how do we get more people that look like you, more clinicians, more doctors, more you know, where do we start? Do we start in the elementary schools to start talking about mental health, mental wellness?
Pipelining, right? Pipelining. Yeah. Pipelining is important. There's a lot of push behind getting more Black, and I'm going to say Black and Brown men into this field. There are a lot of Black and Brown women in the field of social work and helping and counseling and stuff, right? Men tend to move away from it for whatever reasons, right? But my mentor, a clinical psychologist, Dr. Kirkland Vaughns, he's very adamant about bringing more of us into this field because it's very much needed. Now, because once I got my license and I launched out on my own for my own practice, I was flooded with individuals looking for a Black male therapist, right? And not only from men, but from wives that said, my husband needs to see someone that looks like him, that sounds like him, that, you know, it's the slight minutia of the interactions, right? When a client doesn't have to explain their language to you, right? Because we've gone through a lot of very similar situations. So when you say something to me and I don't have to delve further into like, what exactly do you mean? No, I know exactly what you mean because I've gone through it, I've heard it, I've done it, or someone in my family has gone through it. So that's important. Now, how do we get them in? They need to see more of us. I have a network of therapists, Black and brown, male and female therapists that I interact with on a regular basis. I have a list. So if I can't see someone, I always have someone else that I can refer them to. But I think it's more about getting more of us seen. And like, again, going back to the men's mental wellness initiative that we're doing, the more they can see us and identify with us and understand that when they come to my office, they're not going to be made to feel like they're at the DMV or the social service office. It goes down to the smallest things of what color is your office? How do you design your facility? Does it feel like a DMV? Does it feel like they're going to report to a probation officer, or is it welcoming? Is it an environment where they feel comfortable, where they feel like they're special because this space feels special, right? Those little things mean a lot in when we talk about removing the stigma and normalizing the conversation around mental health. Listen, I find that my clients are more than willing to talk about some hard conversations when they're put in an environment that makes them feel welcome, that makes them feel heard, that makes them feel like, you know, someone cares about them. And all of this goes back to cultural competence. Cultural competence doesn't mean if I'm seeing a Black person, I gotta have a Black power fist on the wall, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But there's research done on what's more inviting, down to the color of your walls, down to the type of art that you put up, down to the type of couches or chairs that you have into your offices. Those are the small things that need to be researched and really thought about when we talk about serving our people, right? And so what would bring more of us in is them seeing more of us doing it and knowing that it's a possibility for them to come in and really make a difference in their community. I know a lot of young men, a lot of young women of color that are currently in school, they're becoming psychologists, they're becoming therapists, they're becoming social workers because they want to combat the experiences that they've had growing up. And I know I can ramble on and on, but we just need to see more of us doing it, but doing it well, not just falling into the culture of the way that it's been done for years. No, there needs to be a change. There needs to be a change.
I'm coming to you, Charita, for us in a second. I know that when I began with NAMI in 2016, NAMI, if we want to tell the truth on ourselves, was considered really a white middle class women's organization. That's the way it started. That's the way it has continued. I'm encouraged that we're doing this, and we're talking about mental health, wellness. We're talking about cultural competencies. These things are necessary for organizations like NAMI, so we could also be a part of the healing, a part of what's happening with mental health, right? So I'm encouraged that we're doing this. Charita. Again, we're going to start wrapping up in a little while. In your walk, your journey with therapists and with counseling and stuff like that, what has it been significant that you have a woman or someone who's Black or someone who lives in Maryland? What has been helpful to you, or what has not been helpful?
The therapist that I had who was pivotal to my getting better was a Black male Christian counselor. He had a degree from Loyola University in pastoral counseling. At that time, Loyola had one of the best programs in the country. We're talking about the 80s. It made a difference that I had someone he was apostolic, I was apostolic. I didn't go to his church, but he understood where I was spiritually, as what the therapeutic techniques were that we needed to use. So we met every week, and every week that we met, I was allowed to drive where we were going with this. And I was unpacking all kinds of stuff. I will say one of the things that is important with whatever therapist you use or counselor, you have to feel safe. You have to feel that who you are is safe with the person that you're talking to. If you don't feel safe, if you don't feel respected, you're not going to make progress. You're not going to do what it is you need to do because you're not feeling that safety. And I'm telling you, from 1987 to 1989, I had that one counselor. We actually were going to stop the counseling in January of 1989, but I got engaged. And so we just went through to my marriage in June, and he even did the invocation at my wedding. I had mentioned at the beginning, I didn't need any more therapy until 2019, when I was burning out with taking care of my parents. And because of how fabulous that therapy and effective that therapy had been, I knew that what I needed was some therapy.
Very cool, very cool. Just to wrapping up a little bit, just throwing this out to the panel. Again, we talked a little bit about it. What would you say you would want people to know about mental health that they don't know about? What would bring people to come and hear a conference like this? What would you want people to know from law enforcement to community engagement? What do you want them to know?
I would want people to know that mental health is physical health. It's, if you have something going on with your mind is a part of your body. And what we didn't talk about is the shame of mental health conditions, especially among Black people. Black women are expected to be strong, take it on your back, do what you need to do. And nobody expects Black women to need any kind of help. We're supposed to just power through. And so we need to understand that you're not a child of a lesser God if you need somebody like Tracey, who's been trained to take you through the steps. it actually shows a lot of strength that you are reaching forth to somebody who can take you through the steps. And the other thing I've said to people when I tell them about seeking a therapist, I say, and your therapist can't tell anybody what you said. So unless it's like something that had to do with suicide, but your therapist, it's not like you might tell your friend and they might tell somebody, but your therapist isn't going to tell.
And on that note, real quickly, I find the best therapy I have is talking to Ernie Hart or talking with some of my friends, because it's a give and take. It's not just the one thing and this person and they're here to. I need the interaction. I need them to say, well, you know what? I experienced that too. And so it depends on what kind of therapy, but I guess a clinician can talk to the fact that, you know what? We don't talk about ourselves. We just talk about you, and that's what you need or whatever. So I guess Thurston, I don't know whether you can speak to that.
Yeah,
Is
just
there
real briefly,
rules?
because I know you want to get other people in, but this is something I talk about all the time. I think I'm more effective when I'm able to share a bit of myself. Does that mean I'm laying out every little bit of my life? No. But in my training, we were taught, just like you said, that you don't really share your personal stuff, right? But I find it more effective when I'm talking to clients and I can share with them, hey, I've been through something similar, or I've been through the same thing, right? Or I've seen this happen. Because again, it brings them out of isolation to let them know they're not the only ones going through it. I think it's effective. I don't overdo it, but I definitely use it as a technique to connect with the client, to let them know I hear them and I understand. So I'll leave it there.
Ernie, do you think this is a stupid question. Now, do you think that everybody should be in therapy or
Well,
what?
actually, first of all, Thurston, I just want to tell you, when I preach, I always preach about myself, my family, because it is something, oh man, Deacon, that was great. You touched me today. Could be one person. And John knows I like to preach. I mean, I'm not Al Sharpton, but I'm not boring, right? But to your point, to your question, John, one of the things that I find is that there's sort of a generational shift. Our generation, you and me, John, mental health, the mental issues was like taboo. You couldn't talk about that. And you talked about that in the beginning. My children, their generation, it's not the same kind of off-limits subject. I see that in my children, in my students, in my younger friends. I mentor a lot of people, and I think to your point, it is changing the perception of needing help and getting it. It's not that taboo that it used to be. Now, obviously, there's still issues and people still have problems with it, depending, but there is a recognition, and at least from my vantage point, that younger people coming up now do not necessarily have the same kind of feeling about it that our generation did and our parents. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the wonderful things about COVID. I think people started to take stock in their mental wellness and their mental health. So if there's anything good that happened through COVID, that was it. But also, there's been a shift. I feel there's a shift in the atmosphere about mental health, and our kids are taking advantage of it. My daughter came to me a couple of months ago and said, "Dad, I'm going to see a therapist in school. Well, see a therapist." And I was like, "Wow, that whole EI, the emotional intelligence for her at 19 years old to say, you know, it's okay. to me to see a therapist, and my friends are seeing one too. So that's a good thing. We're gonna go to the chat. I do want Tracey, did you want to say something regarding anything real quick? And what we'll do before you go, Tracey, I want, again, we're gonna take a little half-hour break. Those I know that our panelists may not be able to stay on or come back, but I'm kind of like, I want you guys to come back if you can, because I'm teasing it a little bit, because we're gonna go into national. National is going to be a kind of, they have incredible speakers and it's going to be great, but there's going to be no feedback. So I kind of, when we come back, just for 5 to 10 minutes, to really, really sum up what you want to kind of want people to leave with, but not yet. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna say, as far as mental health and mental wellness is just self-care. So
Okay.
people take time to do some self-care, and like I said, we're all mental every day. There's something going on up and down with us every day, and to realize that even to begin starting to mentally make yourself well, or helping yourself mentally, doesn't have to come with necessarily seeing a clinician. Like I said, we offer yoga, we offer art, we offer sound therapy, we offer stretch. There are a lot of things that people don't understand that they can do as far as self-care to help themselves get mentally well. So it's like, for people to get rid of that, the general stigma behind it, and understand that it's all about self-care and what you need to take care of yourself. And if that comes with seeing a clinician, or talking to somebody, or seeing a coach, or getting a consultant or something, just to help you move through your day, or help you learn how to move through your day without somebody telling you what to do, is part of being mentally well. And like I said, physical, mental, spiritual, all of that has to do with that. So, just to let people know that that's what mental health is all about. It's your overall well-being.
Yes. Liz, I'm going to bring you in here, Liz, in terms of things that you might want to comment on, but also if you could kind of, I wasn't looking at the chat or the questions, but I'm looking at them now. I don't want to go out of order. And so maybe you could come in and talk a little bit about the questions.
Sure. A lot of the questions were very specific mental health questions that people, challenges that they're experiencing. So I've literally just been directing people to different clinics and places that might work for them from where they live. Some people are in Staten Island, they're from all over our area. So I've been answering those.
So you actually answering their questions.
I've been answering them because, that's what we do at NAMI every day of the week.
Yeah.
So, and again, to be very clear, what NAMI provides are resources to general, help. Like, for example, the walk-in clinic at Zucker Hillside Hospital. And of course, there's DASH out in Suffolk County, and Nassau County has a couple, but they're really in baby stages. They are evolving. They do not have what Suffolk County has. Neither does the state of New York, to be honest with you. But in any case, so I'm answering people's questions. Some are from Miami, people are calling in from wherever, which is part of the objective of this conference, is that people are calling in from wherever they can. And and then so John, in terms of questions, I think it's really important also to just draw that, have that bigger tent, because some people are asking questions about, I'm Latino, I'm this, I'm that, they're not just whatever, so it's just understanding that communities of faith are every community of faith,
right.
That talking with trusted people in your community, and if they're not talking about mental health in a way that feels comfortable for you, yes, let's have a greater conversation with NAMI. And to the people who are on this panel, you've spoken beautifully about that it's everything, and what faith means to you and whatever. So that's some of the questions, John, are about people from, different faiths that are not mentioned here, that don't maybe look like you, John. They want to know about the inclusive of that wider tent. That's by and large.
Thanks. I see a question here, if I might read it. This question is for Mr. Hart. My son suffers from bipolar 1 and schizoaffective disorder. He's incarcerated in Lynchburg, Virginia. He was to be released on bond on March 7th, but was not because of a detainment from Bergen County, New Jersey. He is still sitting here in Virginia. Is there a time limit as to when he is to be extradited back to the issuing state? If he's not picked up within a certain time frame, shouldn't he be released? His mental health, which had been stabilized, is in jeopardy.
The answer to that question is yes, there is a time limit. The whole extradition, it depends how the state, but there's a process. It involves both governors of the states, the receiving state and the giving state, if you will. There is a certain amount of time that people can be held, because for extradition they're held on remand, which means there's no bail. For the most part, that doesn't necessarily have to be, but most of the time that's what judges do. And it's up to literally the defense attorney, who's ever representing that young man, to make sure that all the policies and procedures are being followed. You just can't sit back, and the parents should be on that defense attorney's back to make sure that their child's rights are being protected. That's what defense attorneys are for.
Wow, that's a great answer. I know that, again, there was no kind of NAMI, there's no Liz that my mother could have called or to get any answers. There's no, and so, the fact that parents can now kind of look things up. I mean, I know there's a specific question about law, but there are people that deal with these things specifically that they could have reached that there was nobody they could reach out to. There was no kind of, I don't know. I just like the fact that you as a judge could address that specifically. I guess you could have addressed it all the time. I don't know. But anyway, it's good that we have people that are addressing specifically mental health issues that we did not have in the past. They didn't have that. I see a question that says, Tamara Reyes says, as a Hispanic female who was prosecuted in the criminal justice system for my mental health, how can we change that? How can we change that that whole dynamic? It's kind of a general question.
Well, if I may, one of the ways that the state legislature has taken is decriminalizing certain crimes and basically telling judges and prosecutors when bail is appropriate and when bail is not appropriate. Right. So that was, if you remember the case of Khalif Browder, which the state legislature looks to all the time when it talks about criminal justice reform. Khalif Browder was a young man who was in Rikers for a long period of time for a relatively minor crime that was ultimately dismissed. And while he was incarcerated, he was abused, physically abused by the inmates and by members of the Department of Correction. Mm-hmm. When he finally got out, he was given a big sum of money, and then soon after that, he killed himself. Mm-hmm. So what legislatures are doing, like New York, is that they recognize that incarceration itself may not only cause mental health issues, but it exacerbates it. So one of the things that they're looking to do is to only make sure that people who need to be in jail are in jail. That the usual, one-off, I did this or I did that, or wasn't violent or whatever, that's not necessarily what the criminal justice is supposed to do. This is the conclusion of the state legislature. And I think that is a good approach. It's not a perfect situation, but it is a recognition that incarceration sometimes causes a lot more harm than good. A lot of times causes a lot more harm than good. So there are say, like, for example, the decriminalization of marijuana. You know, marijuana is kind of legal, but not totally legal, right? But it is decriminalized. The whole idea is, and what did the legislature do? I mean, this is maybe a little off topic. So a lot of times the police would use marijuana as a pretext for a stop, you know, in a car. And what the state legislature said was, you can't do that anymore. You cannot use marijuana as a pretext to stop. You can deal with it if you are stopped for some other reason, but you can't. But it's a recognition that the introduction to the criminal justice system was being abused. And when it comes to mental health, I mean, that's part of it, because people do things. If they're having an episode, they don't need to go to jail, right? And what happens is people go to jail, they don't get treated. I got to tell you, one of the things as judges we had to do is we had to go to Rikers to see where we were putting people. And we went to one unit and we saw a counselor basically treating some of the inmates. And how did they treat the inmates? Does anybody, I mean, they were in jail, they're in Rikers, and the way they treated the patients is that they each incarcerated person was in a booth, in a cubicle, chained to the side of the wall, and there's one counselor, like almost like a teacher, you know, providing counseling services. That's not necessarily the way to go, right? Yeah. So again, it's an issue that is way beyond New York, way beyond, it's across the country. But there is a recognition, at least we have that, there's a recognition that mental health issues should not be treated with incarceration, should not be treated with crimes, you know, as to be charged with crimes. And that's something that we continually have to push. You know, one of the things I must say, before I became a judge, I didn't think much of it. But I saw people who were, you know, had some real issues, you know, and committed crimes, not because they wanted to, not because they had to, because they were sick, whatever. And, you know, my thinking about all this, it's not that I changed it, I developed it. And so when we talk about this topic and the criminal justice system, it is so intertwined. Unfortunately, it's not getting all the resources that they should. You know, to Thurston's point, that not enough money is spent to deal with people not going to jail in the first place, right? What are those things? You know, in the schools, you know, what's the schools doing? You know, I think Tracey was talking, one of the things when Tracey was talking, one of the things I was thinking about, you know, there was studies in education where students basically perform by what people expect of them. Black kids particularly, but kids of color generally, they had low expectations, particularly when you talk about public schools, inner city schools. And what happened because of that? Those kids are the ones who they had self-image problems, they had no hope. You know, all these things, they're all interrelated. And like I said, there's no one thing that fits all, and it's just so complicated, but you got to start someplace. And what you folks are doing are great, because you're a piece of it, you know, you're effectuating change, but it's the whole system.
Absolutely.
The whole delivery of services, education, medicine. When I was associate dean at Columbia, that was primarily, you know, in Harlem Hospital, we had Columbia physicians treating, all the Columbia physicians were, I mean, all the physicians in Harlem Hospital were Columbia physicians, right? What was the purpose? The purpose was to make sure that they had the quality care that they deserved, right? So again, one piece at a time. You have to go, you can't do everything at the same time. You got to do piece by piece. If you have an opportunity to do something in the school, you have something to do in your church, you have something to do, that's what you do, right? And just keep on keeping on, so to speak.
Good. My final, I'm going to give all of our panelists 2 minutes, famous last words or of what you want people to leave with, what you want people, whatever you want to say. And I want to start off with my friend Charita, in terms of anything you want to say to kind of wrap up in 2 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to hold up my book.
Amen. Yes.
My bipolar life is available on my website, which is www.charitacolebrown.com, all lowercase, my name, all lowercase. For me, the important thing, and John, thank you for allowing me to come and speak. The important thing is for people to understand that there is hope. I was diagnosed with a severe mental health challenge. So as I had said, the SMIs are bipolar, schizophrenia, and major depression. I was not expected to thrive in life. I was not expected to live the life that I have lived. I like to use Galatians 2:20. It says, Paul said, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. The life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And as I tell people, I've been able to live this life because Jesus believes in me, because I have a relationship with him. He believes in me. This is when you look at the book and you see the diagnosis and what people expected. I'm not living the expectation. I'm not living what my life looked like it was going to be. I don't have a caregiver. I was a caregiver. And as I said, the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me.
Wow, thank you, Charita. Thurston, 2 minutes.
I think I could do this in less than 2 minutes. My final words are something that I like to share with everyone is you don't have to wait for an incident or a major breakdown or anything to seek help, professional help. Sometimes it's just guidance. You don't have to wait till your marriage is falling apart to look for a marriage and family therapist, right? If you feel any type of discomfort or maybe things are going well and you want to do a little better, that's a perfect time to reach out and find a therapist, find someone that can help you. Sometimes, like you said, sometimes it's just a friend, that you can share with. But I find that many times we all sort of live in this isolation. It goes back to the whole in a lot of families, it's like what happens in this house stays in this house, and we grow up with that. And it's time for us to come away from that, come out of isolation, share with someone, find someone you could share with. I keep a list of 4 brothers that I can call, and more importantly, that Erica can call if I'm getting out of line, to put me back in place. They're men that I respect, that she knows I'm going to listen to if they call me. I'm not going to just dismiss them like they don't know what they're talking about. I keep those men around me. It's important for us to have community. So again, I want to thank you, John. I want to thank NAMI. Tracey, it's so great to see you on the call today. I look forward to our work together. And Ernie and Charita, it's an honor to sit beside you, even if it's virtual, to share in this panel. And we just need more of this to keep going on, John. So thanks for creating this platform.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I'm not one of those 4 guys that you called, but that's all right. last word. Ernie. Famous last word.
I gave Thurston, Tracey, Charita, John. It's been an absolute pleasure. I actually, when John asked me to do this, it's like, oh, I got something else to do. I mean, because, but I will tell you, I, for one, have enjoyed this discussion. And I hope that, people who are listening, get something out of it. So, John, you are a man of honor and love, and have a lot of respect for you to take what you've experienced and developed it into what you're doing now. I have the utmost respect for you, and I think NAMI should be very happy to have you.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it. I want you to bring it home, Tracey.
Why me? Anyway.
Because you're in the thick of that community.
I am in the thick of it, but I just want to thank NAMI and John, for inviting me to this panel. I feel honored. Thank you very much for the panel, Charita, Ernie, Thurston, and John. I look forward to working with all of you, actually. You know what I mean? Hopefully we can get together and work and, create some great moments for the community. The one thing that I just honestly want to say to everybody who's still on the call or whatever, mental health is wealth. Health is wealth. Okay. So, it's a matter of just self-care and taking care of things and just finding somebody who can lead you in the right direction. You know what I mean? Talk to somebody, show up. Like I said, I'm a big advocate of just showing up first, because that is the first step for everything that happens. You just have to show up and, and trust that we are here for you to provide you with whatever you need, So, as far as
where can we find you? Where can we find you?
You can find me, as far as email is concerned.
Yes, to the people that are tuning in, if they want to get in contact with you.
My email is Tracey Williams, CLC, which is a clinical licensed coach at gmail.com. Tracey Williams, CLC at gmail.com. You can find me there. You can also find me at the Parent Resource Center in Hempstead. If you look it up, we do have a website and stuff like that. And like I say, mental wellness and comes in, of various ways. You know what I mean? There's always something that can be offered to you to bring you back to where you need to be. If that's the case, people just have to reach out. So my whole thing is, reach out to us. Self-care is important. Mental health is part of self-care. And I just want to thank everybody again. I feel very honored to be here, and I look forward to working with all of you.
I'm always, I love this kind of stuff. This is what I love to do. I am encouraging people who are listening, tell your friends, your family to tune in tomorrow. Actually, I want you to come back because it's not over yet. We're doing as I say, NAMI National has incredible speakers that are coming on. Unfortunately, we're not going to interact, but Dan Gillison is an incredible speaker. He is now the CEO of NAMI National. So he's great, and there'll be several other speakers that are coming on. So we're going to take about a half-hour break. But I do want to say for myself, living with a mental health diagnosis, again, it's not a death sentence. In my story, I talk about the challenges that I face, but I also talk about the triumphs. And I think the triumphs far outweigh the challenges. I think that in community, like we're doing here, we're all talking about issues, talking about our strengths, our weaknesses, how we can help, how we can. That really is a great thing to know that, I could call up Thurston, I could call Tracey, community Ernie, Charita talking about. That's comforting for me. Hopefully it'll be comforting for families and know that NAMI is there. Go to the website NAMIQN.org, as well as different platforms, NAMI_QN. So this thing. So I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my little heart. And we will do more of these things. This is important. More of these things. So I thank you guys. Liz, I want to bring you on to say a few words as our fearless leader from NAMI, Queens Nassau. Anything, Liz?
Thank you, John. And thank you all of the panelists. It was really excellent. You know, the comments in the Q&A and in the chat have been very supportive and very thankful for the conversation, and a lot of enthusiasm and heartfelt warmth for what we're doing here. And so thank you. And as John said, yeah, you know, this afternoon, it's not just NAMI leadership, NAMI, there's a lot of motivational speakers that will speak in the national, and it's only available when I click play on via Zoom. So it's only available today, and then tomorrow's will only be available tomorrow, national. So I encourage you to, you know, come back and listen, even if you're doing other things, you know, just listen, because I think it's important. So public service announcement, during the waiting time, we do have a QR code to click to donate, which is always appreciated because, as you guys know, we are completely grant funded. Participants don't pay, companies and so forth do. So please do click to donate. And again, self-serving NAMI/QN Fest at the end of September 29th. We're going to have festival and also panelists speaking about serious mental illness as well as mental health housing. Big mystery out there, how you get housing. So it's very important, is why most people call us, to be honest with you, beyond.
And that's in person, right, Liz? That's in person.
An in-person event at Queensborough Community College in Queens, and it's the first time we're hosting it there. Usually we're at the beach, but this time we wanted to be in Queens. So so you know, whatever. Even though I'm all the way out in Suffolk as well. And I go to all the police meetings in Suffolk because it matters. But in any case, all thank you again. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you guys. Please come back. Again, also tomorrow, we will be on again at 11 o'clock. We have incredible speakers. One is a young man by Sugar Ray Marston, who I met years ago, who is doing incredible work in Queensbridge housing projects, and now around the country. They have a documentary about his life. He has a book. He has a studio. He's incredible. And then another friend of mine, Medina Tyson Jett, who wrote an incredible book about her relationship with her son, who exhibited, who has bipolar, and what she has gone through. So we're going to be discussing that and doing a little bit more Q&A as well. So come back tomorrow, come back now.